policy, getting wars to stop and stopping the death, and yet he was criticized, and we realized he was criticized because there's no money in peace, there's only money in war. And so trying to be the guy that solves that, I guess, puts a target on your back, because a lot of powerful entities have profiteered very much from that. And so we wanted to make sure that we created something that hasn't existed in a while, and we saw that yesterday in the opening ceremonies here. Justice. Justice is a great idea, but it has not been weighed equally. Justice has been weaponized. It has been benefited, to one side only. And a big part of that can't just come from government and governmental entities. We actually have to do that in the private sector as well. One without the other doesn't work. And so that was a big focus of 1789 and what we wanted to do, to fund those companies that exist that agree with the fundamental tenets of so many of the freedoms that we are afforded as Americans. And we want to make sure that happens for the rest of the world as well.
There's a straight line to the decline of the American middle class with our embrace of China, starting with its entrance in the WTO. And I blame our policymakers more than I blame our Chinese for outsourcing our entire supply chain to a country that's 4 times our size. During the George W. Bush and Obama presidencies, you saw this decline accelerate. And the issue that we have is it's not just the policymakers, they were aided and abetted by corporate America that were willing to do that and outsource all of their activities, and then that undermined the middle class in the United States. This is a period of deterioration, and the policymakers and corporate America, again, who then at the same time were embracing this concept of wokeism and ESG policies that made absolutely no sense to shareholder value. It's now established that it actually destroyed shareholder value. And what else were we doing? Fighting wars and quagmires in the Middle East, where we were spending trillions of dollars unnecessarily. The wars in Afghanistan and Iraq got us absolutely nothing. So again, when you talk about further intervention in the Middle East, and again, this is why President Trump won. He was the first to call out China, and he was first to very vocally be against these unnecessary wars. That's why he won. People were sick of it. So if anybody else wants to start another war, the burden is not on us to say no. They have the criminal burden of proof, beyond a reasonable doubt, to do another folly.
In fact, during the campaign, he was accused of perhaps trying to start wars. That was kind of a slogan that many people pushed, his critics.
I mean, it was probably one of the dumbest sound bites in the history of sound bites, but again, when the narrative was controlled by one side, when censorship was running rampant and it was really functioning as the cheerleader for the left, that was ridiculous. I mean, Donald Trump was labeled as the guy that was going to start World War III. Ironically, it wasn't Donald Trump where all these wars started. Russia didn't invade Ukraine under Donald Trump. They did it, under Obama. They did it again under Joe Biden because, again, they understood that feckless leadership in the White House would allow the bad actors of the world to run rampant. That's a story as old as time. Predators prey on the weak, and if America is weak, the predators are going to act. So that great irony that Donald Trump was going to start World War III when he's the only one in modern foreign policy history who's actually solving wars shouldn't be lost on people, and yet it's something that no one's ever going to speak about.
We're going to talk about the Middle East and Ukraine in a moment, but I just want to go back to China because, of course, we know that China dominates and controls the critical minerals. Can America catch up, and how?
100%. We just have to get active. The reality is that the way that China has conducted themselves, especially in Africa as it relates to rare earth minerals, they show up with a briefcase of cash, they pay off someone, they promise jobs, they show up and they bring their own workers. They promise infrastructure. They build it, and 2 years later, it crumbles into the ground, and then they leave, leaving a wake of destruction in their background. I think so many of the African nations have woken up to the way that China behaves, and I think that opens up an opportunity for American companies to go in there. Our mandate is we invest in America, but so many other American companies will go into these areas if they feel that they can actually deal on a fair playing field. That has to be created. We've seen the supply chain crises issues over the years. America can no longer just sit there and hope that China is going to be a good actor and distribute these things around the world. I think the rest of the world also understands that they want America to be at the forefront of all of that because they understand where they stand with China as well.
The entire ethos of 1789 Capital is about the reindustrialization of the United States. So we are totally behind that. Everything we invest in within the United States does one of two things, either enhances the security or prosperity of America. And reindustrialization doesn't mean making the same types of widgets you made 50 years ago for those people who try to undermine our sentiment. In fact, it means winning in the new economy around areas like artificial intelligence that also, I think, have demonstrated that if you outsource your supply chain, you don't have true national security or sovereignty. We saw this very clearly in COVID. If another country produces the most important goods for your country, then you're in trouble. And we could not do anything with the Chinese during that period of time because they were making things like all of our pharmaceuticals. So it's a national imperative for the private sector to step up and start investing in areas like this. And we're doing that at 1789. And the great thing is, during this period, we have an administration who is being very active in supporting that as well.
I want to bring your focus and attention back here to the Middle East. We've just heard from the Qatari Prime Minister, and of course, Qatar was pivotal when it came to ceasefire talks in the Middle East. And we saw President Trump's 21 peace point plan that he worked with leaders in this region. But the ceasefire is fragile. Do you think it can be sustained?
I think it can, but I think we also have to recognize what's going on. I mean, I think that was pretty breaking news to find out that both the Israelis and the United States basically asked Qatar to bring in some of these people because you're having talks, not just with nation states, but other actors, whether we agree that they're bad or good, they still have to be a part of that peace process. The fact that Qatar was able to do that, they did that at the behest of the United States and Israel, and didn't say anything as they're being critiqued around the world because they had the objective of actually getting to peace, and rather than throwing your allies under the bus to save some PR headaches, they did that. I want more allies like that. I want more partners like that. Very different than what we've seen from places like perhaps the European Union over the last few years, although we didn't see that much yesterday, but over the last few years where it was like, you know what? I'll get a great soundbite in the media if we critique Trump's plan. Even though our foreign policy experts, and I say experts very loosely because if you're an expert but you haven't been right about anything in about 25 to 50 years, you should likely lose your expert status. That doesn't actually happen. So to have an ally like that that's willing to take those hits because of the greater good, to get to a resolution rather than to solve a PR headache in the day, I mean, I think that's true leadership and should be commended.
We just also heard the Qatari Prime Minister, Tucker, asked him whether, Qatar was going to pay for Israel's destruction, and it was clear that they're not going to. But is the Trump administration, from your perspective, committed to ensuring that there is a reconstruction program? Because there are many who fear that the administration is going to move on pretty quickly and not sort of stay at the long course.
Well, I think without question. I mean, if there's one thing my father is, he's a builder. I know, obviously, he's been in politics for the last decade, but he got there by being a builder, so he understands how to do that. I do also know, though, that he understands that the American public isn't going to do what they used to do for years, where we're just going to be the big dumb guy with the checkbook and we're going to cover all of the world's problems and no one else has to do their part. I think he can be, the greatest construction manager in the history of the world, but no one in America wants to bear the entire responsibility of that. That's happened for far too long. Everyone has their ideas. Everyone wants to do X, Y, Z. When it comes to actually writing a check and breaking out their own checkbook, well, we're not interested in that. That changes things. The American public doesn't have the appetite to fund everything for everyone all over the world with no direct benefit to themselves. So I think he can be the manager that brings that together, but everyone's going to actually have to step up and do their part and not just leave it to the United States to cover everything.
Omer, do you think that the private sector has a role to play when it comes to, say, the reconstruction of Gaza?
I'm sure. I mean, I think that there'll probably be an opportunity for the private sector, but also there'll be governments that step up and, to help solve this issue. I mean, again, we're here as business people, and our focus is mostly in the United States, though.
I want to focus on Ukraine because, of course, as you say,